What's up, guys? Welcome in to the first episode of Somewhere in the Middle, a Big 12 show here at Play the Fight Song College Football Show. If you're joining us for the first time, appreciate you guys jumping in. Do me a favor, click the subscribe button before we get started. Here at Play the Fight Song, we cover everything from coast to coast, all college football with our live weekly episodes each and every single Wednesdays. And sometimes we give you guys some Sunday recaps, but this show is new. My name is Jake. I'm a co-host here at Play the Fight Song, and I'm going to be covering what is my favorite conference in all of college football, the Big 12. I started this show because I feel like a lot of these teams don't get enough coverage and this conference doesn't get enough spotlight. And what a better time to start this episode than week 2. A lot of Big 12 teams have huge games on the slate this weekend. So let's talk about it. What we're going to do each and every single week, we're going to cover the week that was prior. I'm going to talk about week 1 a little bit, and we're going to highlight week 2 in the weeks ahead, covering everything you need to know about these teams. And honestly, looking at where your teams are at, I think the Big 12 has one of the more passionate fan bases in all of college football. So if you're coming from West Virginia, UCF, Utah, BYU, Iowa State is my team. I got to throw that out there. Somewhere in the heartland. Appreciate you guys all tuning in before we get started. I got to clarify this first episode before we do this. Somewhere in the middle where I came up with this title, there's kind of a couple of different things we can go with this. I know one of our co-hosts, Cam, was wondering where I really came up with this title. Couple of different things. When you're talking about the Big 12 and its talent discrepancy in college football, you would probably say it's somewhere in the middle. It's not SEC, it's not Big 10 level, but it's above a G5. I think Cam might disagree with me and give me some slack there, but I think that this talent level is somewhere in the middle. A lot of Big 12 teams, we're not mainly a heartland conference anymore, but there's still a lot of teams left at Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, all those Texas schools. They're somewhere in the middle. The UCF fan asks where you play the majority of your conference games, somewhere in the middle. Last but not least, guys, I am an Iowa State fan, first of all, but I would like to think my biases are aside when I bring this show on the table. And I'm somewhere in the middle about all of these schools. I'm not going to favorite one team over the other, I promise. We do a lot of great things here at Play the Fight Song. We actually do fan perspectives for our teams in the Midwest. We do a fan perspective for Nebraska, Iowa, and Iowa State. So I leave all my Iowa State content to the side for that portion of those things. You can look back at our channel and find all of that great stuff along with our weekly live college football shows. All right. Before we get started, we got to shout out our partner. Here are our partners over at No Rivals brand. These are one of the best hats in all of college sports and in the game right now. And if you're a Big 12 fan, there's, I think, a 70% chance that No Rivals has got you hooked up. If not, I think our goal for the end of the season would be maybe to get everybody on this list. If you're an Arizona State fan, Baylor fan, K-State, Houston, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU, Utah, or West Virginia, your hats are up on there. Go get yourself a great hat to rep on each and every single Saturday. And when you do and you check out, make sure to use the code PTFS. That's PTFS, like Play the Fight Song at checkout, and that will get you free shipping on your brand new game day hat. These are awesome. As an Iowa State fan, I'm jealous. They just released some Iowa hats that look great. We got to get the clones in there. I know Cam is just vouching for Nebraska to get them in there. And actually, you can go under the teams tab on their website, Shop No Rivals, and you can go to click request a team at the bottom. If you're one of those fans, I just didn't mention your name, go there maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Let them know, hey, we need an Iowa State hat in there. We need a BYU hat in there, whatever else that looks like. I'm sure if you requested enough, I know how much passion you guys put out there. They're going to listen to you. So again, PTFS at checkout gives you guys free shipping at shopnorivals.com. All right, let's get started. I want to kind of highlight the week that was. Week 1 was upon us. Some Big 12 games were big. Some were kind of just under the radar. As usual, week 1 usually brings you a lot of FCS opponents. And there were some good things to take away from most schools, some interesting things to take away. I want to start off before we get into it. Let's take away some winners and losers of week 1. Week 1 being my first winner. I think this is kind of common for a lot of Big 12 fans that I can agree. How about Arizona State? Kenny Dillingham entered the game in Tempe Saturday night, as I believe the line stopped at 6.5 as a 6.5 point favorite over Mountain West Wyoming. If you are smarter than me, you probably took Arizona State because after I had a pretty okay day at betting college football on Saturday, I was confident enough. I'd heard enough things throughout other spaces and other podcasts that Wyoming was one of the favorite underdogs of the weekend, man. And I think Dillingham's team really heard that. They heard that all week. And from the jump, they jumped on Wyoming. It started with that pick six. As soon as that pick six happened, I believe that was even the first possession. It was over from there. Arizona State, to me, a team I thought was probably going to be the bottom three in this league. And I'm not going to get it too ahead of myself. I think that there's a lot to be left on the table. We haven't even gotten to conference play yet, and they have a big one this weekend. But this team looked fast. I was impressed with Sam Levitt. I personally, I love to talk Big 12 football. I don't pay all that much attention to Big 10, especially at the bottom. When he was at Michigan State last year, I just didn't know anything about the kid. There was rumors that he was better than Rashada. Rashada bounced over to Georgia. So the rumors must have been true. I thought he was serviceable. I thought he was good enough. There's going to be a lot of good teams in this league. This could possibly be a team, if they win this weekend against Mississippi State, I think this is a team that can scratch 3 Big 12 wins and get to a bowl game. But we'll have to wait and see. Week 1 was good for them. They are definitely at the top of one of my winners. Second one, got to stick with one of the newcomers. BYU, and particularly Jake Retzlaff. 41 points against Southern Illinois. Retzlaff had 3 touchdown passes. I believe only like 10 incompletions. I say BYU is a winner, in particular Jake Retzlaff, because all the talk of the offseason with this football team was who was going to play quarterback for them. Retzlaff takes over at the end of the season last year for Keaton Slovis. He was okay. In fact, he really wasn't. He was probably less than okay. He had some bad picks against Iowa State. He threw a massive pick six against Oklahoma last year that kind of cost him that game. He's a gunslinger. I think there's an upside with him. BYU brings in Gary Bohannon over the offseason. Now you're wondering, geez, do they really feel that good about Retzlaff? Gary Bohannon doesn't play, and Retzlaff takes over. I know it's a Southern Illinois team. It's not going to be anybody worth talent-wise in the Big 12, but you got to feel like if you're a BYU fan, you won the weekend. Your team looks positive after ending on kind of a nasty little losing streak last year. So you're heading in the right direction. We'll see what else they got. Again, another big game this weekend. They play tonight. If you're listening to this, if this comes out on Thursday, they play tomorrow night in Dallas against SMU on Friday. Another winner, Cam Rising, man. I tweeted at this. You can follow again. My Twitter's on my handle right there. I tweeted about this last weekend, Thursday night. There was a lot of good takeaways from Thursday football in the Big 12. Cam Rising was one of them. 5 touchdowns. I believe they were all in the first half. Again, much like their counterparts in BYU, you're playing a Southern Utah team that's, again, not really worth much, but he played a lot better than Jalen Daniels did at Kansas. I thought Jalen Daniels looked okay, but Cam Rising comes out and absolutely delivers. He had less than 10 incompletions again. He was perfect in the first half, and it's just really good to see him back because I actually like the receivers that they have this year with Singer transferring in, with Money Parks, Brent Keithy, his tight end that he relies on so much. This offense is just a night and day difference when 7 is behind the center for Utah. And Kyle Whittingham and this team has a really good chance of making some noise this year nationally, as well as the Big 12 conference. And he didn't skip a beat. You couldn't tell that he's been out for 365 days. He picked up right where he left off. I don't really even care what the competition is. He looked awesome. And I think college football and the Big 12 is better off for it. I really don't care that he's here for 7 years. He's a staple of Utah football. Let's go to some of our losers. This is coming, right? Like, you got to figure I was going to say this. Texas Tech. Now, week 1, don't want to overreact to a lot. I think there's some things you can take away for good and for bad. And I haven't changed my opinion too much on any of the teams that I saw in week 1 in the Big 12. But 600 yards to Abilene Christian when you're a giant favorite, that's just alarming. I mean, that cannot be the biggest red flag you see all season. I see a lot of teams. You see a lot of teams in college football really struggle offensively in the first week of the season, maybe the first couple weeks. I'm an Iowa State fan. I've seen the offense struggle for a month before they can figure it out before October. When the defense comes out and shows something like this against an Abilene Christian team, you're supposed to be superior then, much better, much physical. much more talented. You can't give up 600 yards, man. It's inexcusable. Offense looks fine. I think Barry Morton looks healthy. That was a question mark for me. If you listen to our Big 12 preview at Play the Fight Songs weekly show, we had a bunch of season conference previews. That was a concern for me, was Morton's health. He looked fine. So at least you got your quarterback. You know, you have one of the best running backs in all of college football in Brooks. I don't know what you do with this offense or this defense. I'm sorry. I don't know where you go to fix it. Again, you don't want to overreact, but week 1, week 2, bad defenses, it just seems like it's so much harder to turn around. And teams are going to catch on, and they're playing a much better offense this weekend on the road. We'll cover that at the end. Let's go to our second loser. I feel like this one's pretty obvious. We knew Houston going in Willie Fritz's first year, this was probably the worst team in the conference. But it looked worse than it already sounded. Just top to bottom terrible. I looked at their box score, tried -12 rushing yards. UNLV's quarterback, I'm pretty sure, only threw for like 150 yards. It was kind of a slower game. Donovan Smith, if you're a Big 12 fan, Texas Tech fan in particular, Houston fan, you've seen Donovan Smith for a while in this conference. He's had some good moments. He really has. He can't stay healthy sometimes. But the inconsistencies and some of the body language stuff I saw on Saturday, very concerning. Very concerning. That's something I'm not sure you can change overnight. UNLV is one of the better G5 teams in the country. I'll say that. Some people flipped it over and have them as your G5 playoff berth team. We'll wait and see. I'm not saying UNLV is not a bad team, but man, did they expose Houston for what it was. And traveling to Norman this weekend, that's just not the best get game that you could probably get after a performance like that. So Texas Tech and Houston, my two Texas schools, are my losers of the weekend. Although Texas Tech, you're still 1-0. You got to take that away, right? You can't complain about being 1-0. I will say, before I get to my players of the weekend, a lot of people might say West Virginia was a loser of the weekend. I disagree. If you listen to our weekly show at Play the Fight Song, I was high on Penn State. That was one of my better bets of the weekend. I thought Penn State was a terrible matchup for West Virginia. It went exactly how I kind of thought it was going to go. My opinion on West Virginia does not change. I think they can mix things up, win 8 or 9 games, and maybe get the second place vote for a conference title. I don't have an opinion changing on that. Garrett Green is who he is. I think he's a good playmaker against Big 12 opponents, but man, Penn State's got a top 5 defense in all of college football, and it showed on Saturday. And the rain delay didn't help anything. So West Virginia fans, again, I wouldn't panic. You're in a decent spot. Get right again this weekend versus Albany, and I think things will be fine in Morgantown. Here's what I got. Players of the week. Let's go offense first. Tet McMillan, T-Mac. Welcome to the Big 12, even though it wasn't your first Big 12 game. Try 304 yards receiving on 4 touchdowns. Defense didn't look great, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about individual players. T-Mac is a top 5 receiver in college football for me. Some would argue he's the best. I don't think I would put up much of a fight against that. Man, he's just so big. He's physical. He's quick. Like that picture right there, when he caught that, he was fighting the sideline for a little bit, and then he just bursted it open for like 40 yards. To be that fast and that big at the same time, he's a freak athlete. You see him catch the ball through his legs like he's Air Jordan. This guy's going to be an absolute beast. I don't know what to think of Arizona defensively right now, but does it really matter if you can have the capability of keeping up with every team and putting up 50 points in this conference? That's old school Big 12 right there, if we're going to really talk about it. So I'm a big fan of T-Mac. He's definitely player of the week. He probably could have been player of the week in the entire country with that performance. Defensively, Nick Martin, Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State fans might come on here and argue that Trey Rucker had 15 recorded tackles and that he was better than Martin on Saturday. I would just disagree, because Martin had a nice game, 10 tackles, 7 solos, and a good tackle for loss. That sack right there. He plays such a big role in this defense. He's been around for a little bit. He just plays a really big spot on the defense. He's kind of the communicator, and he's really all over the field. Rucker's more of the safety type. He was playing aggressive against South Dakota State, which is fine. He was good. But Colin Oliver, Nick Martin are 2 guys that That's exactly what I think of when I think of this Oklahoma State defense, who's pretty underrated, if we're going to be honest. They have a big test this weekend and a fast Arkansas team that comes to town. But this was a team, 10-point favorite against the FCS back-to-back national champions, and then they left no doubt. It could have been one of my bigger winners of the weekend, but just Oklahoma State. They came out and they didn't surprise me there. I just wasn't surprised by what I saw, so I wasn't overwhelmed. I'm not overreacting, but got to give Nick Martin some love, and great performance out of both of those guys. All right, about the halfway mark. My producer Cam, we got to leave these to about 30 minutes. I can kind of ramble on for a little bit, so we're not going to go too long. We just got to cover the weekend and what's coming up. Massive weekend for the perception of the Big 12. A lot of eyeballs are going to be on this. You got Texas, Michigan, and NC State, Tennessee. Those are your top 25 matchups. Those are your only two top 25 matchups of the weekend. So not a ton going on besides these Power 4 matchups between a Big 12 school and an ACC school. SEC, I don't think Iowa State's playing a Big 10 and Iowa, obviously, in the Cyhawk game. But really, really interesting stuff. How does the Big 12 fare? I will rank some of these games that I think is the most important for the conference. But if you don't know them all, let's go through them. Friday night, like I told you, BYU travels to SMU. I believe they're an 11-point underdog. Let's see if BYU is legit, if they can put up a fight. SMU really hasn't showed me a ton. They played a Nevada team that was okay, fought with them on the road, but Nevada's getting better. We'll see what BYU can do. Oklahoma State, like I said, they host Arkansas on Saturday. Fantastic game. Really looking forward to that and seeing what those two teams are capable of. Kansas State goes down to New Orleans. They travel and they play Tulane. Kansas has to go to Champaign. They play Illinois this weekend. I think that's going to be a slugfest. Cincy hosts Pitt coming to town. Texas Tech, like I mentioned, they got to go to Pullman. They play Washington State. Fantastic game. Something to note: Texas Tech was a favorite going into this game a few days ago, and now they are a 2 or 3 point underdog. The last I checked. Arizona State, like I was talking about, they host Mississippi State this weekend. Jeff Lebby, first-year coach out of Mississippi State, brings in, I believe, Blake Shapen's the quarterback over at Mississippi State. So Big 12 familiar opponent for a lot of you guys over at Baylor. Colorado travels to Nebraska. Whether you're a Big 12 fan or just a college football fan in general, or you just are kind of casual about college football, everyone's going to have their eyes on this game, man. Everybody's going to watch Colorado, see what they can do. I think there's a lot of interesting factors on the Nebraska side. Go back. Cam, our co-host, did a Nebraska fan perspective, as I've mentioned. Go back to our channel. Listen to that. He's crushing it with them. The Nebraska fans love him. And listen to him, see if he's got a better idea on what that game is compared to me. And then, obviously, you have Iowa State traveling to Iowa. Again, I covered that in an hour-long episode with JP, the Cyhawk preview. Go back to our channel, look at that. And then Baylor travels to Utah. And everybody knows, if you've heard me harp on this before, this is not a conference game. Something to note there. It's strange, but it's maybe a little preseason game to our Big 12 slate this year is probably what we're getting out of that. Out of all of those games, here's the ones I think that are the most important. Kansas State traveling to Tulane. 9.5-point favorite. Avery Johnson looked okay. I think Tulane's got some weapons. We covered this last night in our live episode. Kansas State can't afford to lose this game. Your co-favorite, basically K-State and Utah were your co-favorites to win this conference going into the preseason. You can't have your co-favorite drop one on the road to a G5 school. I like Tulane. I think they could get that G5 spot, like I was talking about UNLV earlier. But Kansas State cannot afford to go and lose on the road, especially when you're a 9-point favorite at this point. You still have the better athletes. I think the defensive line is really good for them. Tulane's got Mekhi Hughes, really good running back. I'm interested to see how he can fare against this Kansas State defense. K-State lost a lot of the secondary over the offseason to some transfers, but I like Siegel. I like some of those other guys. I think Parrish is the other guy I was thinking of for K-State. I like the secondary, and I think this defense is good enough to travel on the road. But it's a good test for young Avery Johnson to see if he can play, and let's see if he can pass a little bit against a Tulane defense that's not what it used to be, but John Summerall's a good coach. Kansas at Illinois. Kansas is, to me, in our Big 12 preview, I said if Jalen Daniels is healthy, this is my second team to get into the conference title against Utah. Kansas was a top 5 team going into the preseason in this conference. You cannot lose on the road as a 5-point favorite to an Illinois team who right now I'm putting, are they top 8 in the Big Ten? Maybe down the road. I like the Fegan kid at running back, 250-pound running back. Guy's an absolute truck. But Illinois right now, they're not even above a USC in Iowa, just to name a couple. Are they even better than Nebraska? I'm not even sure at this point yet. Kansas, you're one of the top favorites. You handled this team perfectly last year at home when Jalen Daniels actually was healthy. Do the same here. I'm ready to see Jalen Daniels play a full 4 quarters and to see if he's really back. And we're going to find out a lot about this team. Oklahoma State hosting Arkansas. Again, much like the Kansas-Illinois matchup. Arkansas's got a lot of talent. I like Jaquindon Jackson, the former Utah running back. I like Taylon Green. He's really, really fast. I don't think he's that good of a thrower. What is this Bobby Petrino offense out of Arkansas? A lot of questions. They played Arkansas Pine Bluff last week. Arkansas Pine Bluff would probably – they are arguably one of the worst FCS teams in all of college football. Their defensive line looked like it all weighed 150 pounds. So Arkansas right now, to me, is still not even in the top 10 of the SEC at this point. Oklahoma State was what? 3rd in the preseason polls? You can't lose this game. Not at home. I thought it was such a good sign to see Oklahoma State perform the way they did last week in the first game of the year after we watched them lose 33-7 against South Alabama in September last year. You should. You have all the production back. I like Presley. I like Stribling. Owens. Decent little wide receiver core. Of course, you have Ollie Gordon, the best running back in all of college football. I'm really interested to see what Arkansas does. I think their defensive line is really good. I'm a little concerned if they can get a lot of pressure with like Landon Jackson, defensive end for them. If you can get a lot of pressure on Alan Bowman, that's a concern to me. Obviously, I think the elephant in the room is like, don't let Alan Bowman beat you. Ollie Gordon's just going to get his 100, 150 yards. Like, you're okay with living there, I think, as long as they're not big explosive runs and we're not playing this cat and mouse game. I think we just don't want to let Bowman go for 300 yards because you know what Gordon's going to get you. If you're Arkansas, you don't want to let him go for 300 yards. Presley's making a bunch of plays. Then I think Arkansas is in trouble. That's the game plan for me, what I think Oklahoma State can do. You have one of the oldest offensive lines in the country. Go push this Arkansas defensive line around. That would really impress me, and I'm intrigued to see if they can do it. I got to say it, right? Iowa State at Iowa. Now, I would argue Iowa, this is more important to Iowa because right now a lot of them think that 10 wins gets them in the college football playoff. If that's the case, you can't lose this game to Iowa State at home. Iowa State, for us, honestly, if you're besides Utah or maybe Kansas State, isn't just the goal to win the Big 12 title if you're trying to get to the playoff? Like, your resume isn't that important because you're just Big 12. I hate to say it, they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt and get that at-large bid with a lot of these teams. They're just not. So it's kind of you're going into Iowa City with, no pressure, I guess. Iowa's got a lot to live up to. I think the Big Ten's got a standard to live up to as one of those powerhouse conferences like their counterparts in the SEC. But at the same time, if Iowa State goes on the road and beats Iowa, I think that gives the Big 12 in general a big lift. And I'm not just saying that as an Iowa State fan. I genuinely think that bumps Iowa State into the top 25. We need to get as many top 25 teams as we can get in because eventually in conference season, everybody knows it's just going to be a slaughterhouse. Everybody's going to beat everybody. It's going to be chaos. Win these games now. I think Iowa State winning in Iowa City would be huge for the Big 12. Lastly, I put Utah at Baylor. Why is this important? Well, first of all, it's not a conference game, so is it really that important? But second off, if you're Utah and you're supposed to be kind of the big favorite in this conference, you're 15-point favorite right now. I think you got to beat Baylor pretty bad. And I liked the way Baylor started last week. If you're a Baylor fan, I think you're feeling good about week 1. You're in a lot better spot than you were last year losing to Texas State. You beat Tarleton State by a bunch like you should. Daquan Finn is fast. Monterey Baldwin is quick. You got to use your speed if you're going to compete with Utah here. But this is one of the best defenses in all of college football, man. And this is the first Big 12 team that's got to travel to Rice-Eccles Stadium with everybody knows the record. They're like 30-3 in, I don't know, it's like the last 5 or 6 years. I think Big 12 people, Big 12 fans, Big 12 teams are going to find out how hard it is to travel to Salt Lake and really compete with Utah there. And I know, again, it's not a conference game, but if you're Utah, just open the floodgates and put it on this team to kind of let everybody know, hey, we were the favorites for a reason. So I think that's important just for the Utah aspect. All right. We're going to wrap up this episode again. I'm trying to keep it at 30 minutes here for you guys. Hope you've enjoyed it so far. If you're listening already, please click the like, click the subscribe. We really appreciate everybody that follows along, whether you come from the Iowa, Iowa State, Nebraska side of things. If you're a Big 12 fan and you're new to here, like my video. We're going to give you a lot of good Big 12 content throughout the season, but our college football weekly episodes at Play the Fight Song on Wednesdays is as good as it gets, man. We love to cover college football, and we're just a couple of college friends who just really love this sport. As always, use PTFS, shopnorivals.com for free shipping on any Big 12 hat that you can get your hands on. All right, let's get to it. Let's finish this up. I got predictions. There's too many games to go through. I'm not going to give you scores. I think giving you scores is kind of dumb. We're just going to assume that all the Big 12 schools are going to beat their FCS opponents. So chalk those guys up. I got those guys winning. I think that's including UCF beating Sam Houston at home. Not worried about it. I'd love to talk about the KJ Jefferson situation on next week's episode. Let's look back and watch that this week and see where they're at. All right. SMU. I got them beating BYU Friday night, 11-point spread. I'm not sure if BYU's got enough to keep up right now. I think Oklahoma State's going to beat Arkansas. Do I think they cover? I don't know. I think Oklahoma State could slow it down, and I think they can run with Arkansas. I think they can do both. I think they've got enough weapons to do both. In a home game in Boone Pickens, give me the Cowboys. Kansas State, again, I actually picked them not to cover in our show yesterday, but I think they beat Tulane. I think it's going to be a scrappy game. Tulane had Ole Miss on the brink last year when they came to town. And that Ole Miss team is better than this Kansas State team right now, I think. So Kansas State's going to win. Avery Johnson might struggle a little bit in his second big game of his sophomore year. We'll have to wait and see. Cincy, I have them beating Pitt. I like the quarterback, Sorsby, for them. I think that's a major upgrade over Emory Jones. And I was the first to admit I was kind of wrong about that in the preseason. But I think they take care of Pitt. Utah beats Baylor. Nebraska, I have beating Colorado. I just don't trust the offensive line for Colorado right now. If Nebraska doesn't turn it over, I don't know if they lose that football game last year. I guess I'm going to trust a 18-year-old kid, true freshman Dylan Raiola, to not turn it over in the biggest game in his early career. Just so it shows you how smart I am. But I like the D-line for Nebraska. I think they're going to beat Colorado. Oklahoma is going to crush Houston. Arizona State, I will say they beat Mississippi State at home. 6-point favorite right now. Awesome game to finish your nightcap. Washington State, I have beating Texas Tech, and that is a bet for me. If you care what I'm putting my money on, I have Washington State beating Texas Tech. Saw Texas Tech on the road last year in Laramie, traveling to Wyoming. The defense didn't give me any confidence in thinking I can think Texas Tech can come out with this one, but maybe it was a week one overreaction. We'll have to wait and see. Give me Wazoo. What else did I cover? I'm just going through my list here. Illinois, I have beating Kansas. It's a slugfest. They're giving a team 5 points at home. I just don't know. It's a wait and see for me for Kansas. I don't know if my opinion is going to completely change on Kansas as far as a conference title contender if they lose this game, but they're going into a tricky spot. I'm going to take the home team in that one. And of course, I mean, come on. I'm not going to come on here on a Big 12 show and tell you that Iowa's going to beat Iowa State. Give me the Clones. Watch my preview. I'll give you all the explanation there you need. I think it's huge for the Big 12 conference. And I hope to be celebrating Saturday night watching the rest of these Big 12 teams. I counted my record. I have the Big 12 going 5-5 in those Power 4 matchups. If they go 5-5, they go 500. Kansas State wins, Oklahoma State wins, Iowa State wins. The teams that are supposed to, or the teams that really matter in my biggest games that I highlighted win. I think that's good enough for the conference. You got to hope your top teams win. if you're a Big 12 fan right now and you're wanting to try to get more than one team in the playoff, you got to hope the top 5 or 6 teams in this conference come out with wins. The rest doesn't particularly mean that much big of a deal at the end of the day. But who knows? If you're an Arizona State fan, you might be in the mix in November. We all know that's why I started this show. We know how crazy it can get with this conference. The bottom always has as much of a chance as the middle, somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where this conference stands up against the rest. I know the conference season, when we get into it, is going to be a ton of fun. Appreciate you guys joining in. As always, comment if you're an Oklahoma State fan, Arizona State fan, UCF fan, wherever you come from, Baylor fan. Let us know in the comments how you think your team will do this weekend. Let me know if I'm wrong in my predictions. I hope I am, for your sake, if I have your team losing. And always give us a follow every Wednesday. Play the Fight Song with our live weekly college football show. All right. That's it for us in Somewhere in the Middle. We will catch you guys again next week to talk the week that was in week 2 and talk another Big 12 week going ahead in week 3. Appreciate you guys. Play it.